All right, welcome back again to another episode of the Live Your Dreams podcast, where we explore stories of those who dared to dream big and turn their passion into reality. I'm your host, Joe Gawalis, alongside, as always, my fantastic co-host,
Chris Victor.
And today's episode, Chris, is truly something special. We are joined today by an incredible filmmaker whose journey is a testament to the power of persistence, creativity, and believing in your vision. His most recently directed, produced, and co-wrote the highly anticipated comedy feature film Plan B, starring an all-star cast. Listen up, Chris, because this cast is phenomenal. Jamie Lee from HBO's Crashing, Jon Heder from Napoleon Dynamite himself, Tom Berenger, everybody here knows him from Platoon, so many great movies, and Shannon Elizabeth of American Pie, and let's not forget Kate Flannery from The Office. Please welcome the creator behind this fantastic product, Brandon Tamburri. Thank you so much for joining the Live Your Dreams podcast. You are phenomenal, my friend.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, and I really appreciate that awesome introduction.
No, man, you all the introduction, only awesome because you made all that happen, Brandon. Really, I mean, it must be an incredible feeling that you're getting. We'll get into Plan B, and it's coming out September 27th. Everybody's going to hear more about that, but it must be phenomenal getting this close to the release date.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting. It's been a long time coming, several years in the making, which we'll definitely get into, but I'm excited for people to finally see it.
No, I'm sure 100% you are. Now, again, the title of the podcast, Live Your Dreams. And for all of you that heard Brandon's fantastic introduction, all the accomplishments he did around this film, to have co-written, produced, directed this film, that is what it means to live your dreams. You took it from conception all the way to completion. What started Brandon on this journey into this world of entertainment, filmmaking, creativity, even before Plan B? We'd love to take it back to the beginning. When did it start in your mind when you said, this is the path in my life that I'm going to start to go down?
I would say ever since I was a kid, like growing up, I always had a video camera and would just make these short little comedy sketches with friends, siblings, kids in the neighborhood, and things like that. So really from a young age, I loved just not necessarily movies, but really comedy, because I knew I always wanted to work in comedy. And then as I got older throughout high school, I really started for the first time actually trying to write a script. And I think once I was in high school, I really knew that's where I wanted to be. I felt like some of my writing was pretty funny. And then once I got into college, I was actually taking film classes and knew that I was going to try to pursue that as a career. So I'd say loved it from an early age. High school is when I really thought maybe I could do it. And then college is when I actually was pursuing it.
I love that. You had the vision. You knew you wanted to go in that direction. Now you start going to college. You went for film. Where did you go to college? Where did you study in that direction when you went and started, taking the real leap of faith into it?
So I went to college at St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And I started off as a film major. And to be honest, nothing against St. Joe's. I love the school. The film program is very small. And at least at the time when I went there, it was really like a film and theater double major.
Yeah.
So in order for me to have that major, I was also taking theater classes and acting classes. I really wasn't super interested in acting. I was more interested in filmmaking and screenwriting. So I ended up switching to a business major and then took the film minor. And through that film minor, I was really able to take all of the film classes that I wanted. And instead of having acting and theater classes, I was able to take business and entrepreneurship classes. And that really just helped me become a well-rounded filmmaker, I'd say. And I took a lot of that business stuff I learned and applied it to really the business of film.
Brandon, that has to be the most intelligent thing I've heard many people say so far, because, and again, nothing knocking the educational system. I went to college for film myself, and again, you come out of there without that well-rounded education of understanding the business side. They teach you a great craft, understanding the art and the workmanship that goes into creating movies. But like you said, especially if you're going to be an independent filmmaker and you want to be a producer or a director or writer and create your own vision, if you don't have a concept of how business works and the entrepreneurial spirit, you have no chance of getting things made for yourself in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree, because writing a script is an accomplishment in itself, but at the same time, tens of thousands of people probably write scripts and then just don't really know what to do with them. And I think it's really that business entrepreneurial mindset that really helps writers and filmmakers take their project to execution.
Now, did you come from a background of filmmaker as a creative artist, or how did your family kind of feel when you said, you know what, I'm going to go to college to major in film? Because I did the same thing. It's always an interesting perspective to hear what people's families say when you kind of take that path going into the arts.
So I would say I had no connection to the film industry at all. So my mom is a court reporter.
Sure.
And my dad works for a construction company. My grandparents started a steel construction business, and pretty much my whole family has worked at that business. My dad still works there. My brother works there and is in charge of it now. So film was totally outside of like my family's comfort zone and what they really knew. I would say once, again, I was always making videos and stuff growing up. So I think my parents were always supportive of that and thought the things I was making was funny. My mom definitely was supportive of that. I'm like, oh yeah, you got to chase your dreams, go for it, major in film. I remember my dad, wasn't super supportive at first. This is back when printers, I guess people would really print stuff out, like laptops and phones weren't really a thing.
Yeah.
But when I said I was going to major in film, I remember coming home from high school and my dad had this like big stack of papers printed out that was like, college majors that are least likely to work in their field or something like that. And film was like at the top of all these lists, and he was kind of just trying to warn me.
Yeah, no, of course,
Rightfully so. And I think I told him like, yeah, I was like, one thing that I remember saying to him is a lot of those students probably went to good film schools too. I was like, I'm going to St. Joe's. There's like 10 kids at the film program, and St. Joe's is a great school, great business school.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And the film program was very small back then. But yeah, then once I ended up, I'd say taking some internships and things like that in college and getting some jobs, then I think my dad was fully on board. Like, oh wow, you really can work in the film industry. It's like a real possibility. But yeah, my mom was always supportive, and now they're both definitely very supportive.
No, that's great. And it's so important. And again, I feel because I come from an entrepreneurial family as well. My father owns a business. So it's the same thing. It's kind of like a safety thing. But when you show you're committed to what you're doing and you want to get into what you're doing, I love that your family supported you. I feel the same way with mine. And that's great. And for everybody out there that's listening, it's about taking that. It's not just a leap of faith. It's about doing it and doing it correctly. Clearly, Brandon, you were dedicated in what you were doing. And once your family saw that, how else could they be but getting behind you? They have to at that point.
Yeah,
I
no,
like
for
that
sure.
you took action. Yeah, I like that you took action and you showed that, what you can do. Basically, I have a question about your co-writer. How did you guys meet? Was it something that you guys just bumped into each other at film school and you know each other all those years, or someone new that came to you?
Oh, really? Yeah, I'd say friend from college. And my friend Gene, who I wrote the script with. Gene is really not a writer by trade. It was kind of like we would just like bounce funny ideas off each other, and I had written a couple scripts by myself at that point. We always talked about maybe writing a script together, and then we ended up kind of just cranking out this script together. And Gene doesn't really work in the film industry at all outside of this script, and maybe we'll write more scripts together at some point. But yeah, it was definitely fun working on this script together.
Part B of that question was this based on a true story? Anyone that you personally know?
Thankfully, it was not based on true events, but there are a lot of elements of the story that came from my life or from really the lives of other friends and people in my life.
Nice.
I definitely had some, I'd say, friends and family members who were dealing with pregnancies and not necessarily planned pregnancies, and then seeing how these people dealt with that. It's pretty scary. And I was just thinking of like, how can this be funny? and that's kind of how this was born. That's usually how I like to come up with a lot of I have a few scripts that I've written, a bunch of other just ideas in my head and written down that hopefully I'll write someday. But I usually take some kind of serious idea and just try to put a comedic twist on it.
Well, I believe one of the most important things when someone's giving a serious speech is to infuse comedy so people actually take a pause and listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, you're absolutely right. It's talking about getting involved with comedy. You go to film school, you mentioned you started getting, you went into business and you had the film minor, internships, and then I see that you got getting involved with the National Lampoon. A lot of great people around there talking about funny individuals. After you started getting out of the film school world, what kind of started taking you in the next direction? I see you got involved with them. Was it your writing or what your internships? Where did you go from after film school?
So even throughout film school, pretty much every weekend. And there was even times where I would skip my classes to go volunteer on a set and things like that. I would look up different movies that were shows that were filming in Philadelphia and just try to get on set as like a PA.
Sure,
And a lot of times I wasn't even paid. I would just like, I would see like a random casting call or something and then find the production office and say like, hey, any chance I could come be a PA? Like I'll work for free.
That's great.
Eventually I got some credits and could get paid. So I was working for, I'd say the best PA job I had. I was a PA on The Voice, like the NBC singing show. So they were filming like for a couple weeks in Philly, and I was a PA on that, which was cool. I think the first like legitimate PA credit I had was on this movie called Teacher of the Year that Keegan-Michael Key starred in it. And the filmmaker was from Philadelphia, and they were doing like a bunch. I honestly wasn't even on set for that movie. It was more of like a promotional PA where the movie was getting ready, and I was doing a bunch of social media posting, and I was going to different film festival screenings and stuff, and working really closely with the director, which was awesome. So I got some credits on my resume as a PA, and then I ended up kind of jumping around from like freelance jobs. At one point, I had a full-time job at NFL Films, which was pretty cool, just because I'm a big football fan.
Sure.
Then after NFL Films, I started working for a bigger production company. I kind of just lucked into it. It was like a movie producer who was originally from the Philly area, lived in LA for a while, moved back to the Philly area, and was just really like kind of looking to staff up, hired me as an assistant at the time. And I really just worked with him for really about like 4 years or so. And while I was there, I got to work on pretty much every movie that he was involved with. I was an associate producer on the A24 movie Hereditary, which was a really great experience. And again, I'm a comedy person, but I do like a good horror movie as well. So that was an awesome experience. And then around that same time, that company I was working for acquired National Lampoon, who hadn't really done anything for years and was trying to really like relaunch it. It's like a new age comedy studio. And it honestly didn't fully work out as planned. I think part of it was because of COVID and different things. I wasn't necessarily involved in why it didn't necessarily work out. But I know they are doing stuff, I think, again still, and hopefully it does. I like the brand. But all I was involved with that, I was, again, big comedy person, so really pushing just to be as involved as possible with National Lampoon. And I ended up really like producing a bunch of like live comedy shows. I was producing podcasts. I ended up producing and directing a sketch comedy show that ended up getting picked up by Roku.
Oh, good.
And I also we did like a comedy special off of that sketch show as well. And that also came out on Roku. And there's a really great lineup of comedians in that, like Cole Escola, Megan Stalter. We had like celebrity pop-ins as well. It was kind of like a special guest. Rachel Dratch was one of the special guests. Nice. So it was a really fun show. So working on that and actually directing the sketch show and working as a producer, I got to just hang out with a bunch of really funny comedians. We had an office set up in New York for, I forget, it might have been 10 weeks or so. And I wasn't there every single day because I lived in Philly, but I was going up a few days a week, and just working in an office with that many people was a lot of fun. And you're going to learn a lot from people like that.
You know, it's amazing that what you did for our listeners, Brandon, is amazing. You took that leap of faith at the beginning and you said, you know what, let me work at the beginning of my internships or my PA work. I'll work for basically nothing to get my foot in the door. And look where it got you. You were willing to say, I can have forward thinking. I can have the foresight enough to say, this is what it's going to take to get me in that direction. I wish our listeners really, really listen up and listen to you saying that, because it's so important. You can't think you're going to walk into this business or any business at the top of your field. You have to start. You have to be willing to start there, and you're going to be around the right people.
I totally agree. And I'll even say to all of the listeners as well. So I really was working not only unpaid, but on a bunch of movies that like never even got made. There were so many times where I would show up unpaid for like usually a weekend, because I was in college. I wasn't really missing class for anything unpaid unless it was like a really big opportunity. But I was working on a bunch of movies that some of them ended up getting made. Some of them didn't necessarily get made.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. I just got a lot of experience working on set. And then eventually when there were projects coming to Philly that were more of like legitimate Hollywood project, I could say, hey, I have worked as a PA on like 10 movies, and a lot of being a PA is just willing to show up and work hard. Like, you really don't need any experience for that. So if someone's willing just to put in the hours and put in the effort, you could be a great PA and make relationships.
That's so important. You're absolutely right, because being around there is so important. And I love the Philadelphia scene. I think a lot of great movies get made in that area. A lot of people are going through. Pennsylvania has a great tax credit for those of you in the indie world that don't know about that. So there's a lot of great people that are in that Philadelphia area. How was it for you being in that? Again, you're outside of New York, but you're still kind of close. Did you like being in that area and kind of, and commuting up to New York, or did you feel like you'd rather be a little bit closer to like the infrastructure or New York, or did you like being in the Philadelphia area?
So I definitely like Philadelphia. Right now, I'm actually in New Jersey, which is kind of a little bit quieter. There's some projects going on in New Jersey now. There was always some stuff in Philly, though. But Philly is so close to New York. Like, at least at that point, I could hop on the train. It's like an hour and 10-minute train ride from where I was living. So it really wasn't too bad. If I ever had to go up to New York, I could. And it's surprisingly like pretty close to like Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area.
Yep.
I did quite a few projects in that area as well. And it's, if you have a call time at like 6 a.m., which happens a lot, you can make that drive from where I was living in like maybe an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
To like to some of these spots in like northern Maryland. So yeah, I was really just pretty much, if anything was somewhat drivable, I agreed to do it.
I mean, you're putting in the work, and I love that you're letting everybody know that. Now, you put in so much work. You're working with these great mentors. You're learning the business. And then again, like you said before, you came up with the idea with your writing partner for Plan B. How did this process start for you guys? You said you knew the writer from college. Was it something you guys are kind of mulling around for a few years, or was this something that was happening as you were in the field working?
So it definitely was kind of mulling around for a few years, I would say. Like I mentioned, I had written a couple other scripts before, and it really was just kind of felt like time. I think actually I was kind of going through some, maybe I like, yeah, I forget exactly why the why the timing was right, but it was kind of like, hey, you know what, like why not finally write this? And there was we had a bunch of different ideas for a movie, and just felt like this had a lot of potential. I also was kind of looking into the future a little bit, seeing like I'd love to write something that maybe I could make at some point. The other scripts I had written were like these bigger budget movies, and I was thinking like, what really could be a good script to write that really could focus on like the characters and really just like the emotional elements of the story, and not have these big crazy set pieces. And I kind of just outlined the entire thing for this story, thinking like, yeah, you know what? Like, I really think this is, at its core, it's this really heartfelt, emotional story, and we don't really need any major set pieces or things like that. So we really wrote it with the intention of me hopefully making it at some point, which I think, or not, I think it obviously did work out, because all of that ended up happening. But it took years. I think we wrote the first draft in like 2018.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, so yeah, now for all the listeners out there, 2024. So
And here
probably, yeah, it was probably over 3 years of like, we wrote the draft and then continued to, I think we really just wrote the first draft. To be honest, like I did pretty much any rewrites and stuff like that on my own afterwards. But we wrote the draft in 2018. I think I continued to tweak it up through like 2019 and 2020. Then early 2021, or maybe even the end of 2020, I think that's when I was like done with the National Lampoon, and just figured like, you know what, like I was still working there actually, and just said like, you know what, like I'm gonna leave. It didn't really look like they were making movies anytime soon, and I was producing podcasts and things like that. Which again, I love podcasts. This is a podcast.
Yes.
But I wanted to be making movies, so I decided like, you know what, I'm putting in all this work for like another company. Why not just focus all of this energy and effort on my own project? Because for all these years, I was really just like working on other people's work. And again, it was like I mentioned, it was a ton of hard work and commitment. So I figured if I spent all of that time and effort on my own project, that I would be able to see it through.
Bravo.
Seriously, no. What else can you say to that, Chris? Bravo is 100% right. That is beautiful, Brandon. Really, people don't realize what it takes to be in this business and to get a film out there. And I love that you said that. You're going to take that leap of faith. You're going to go forward 100%. Now, the script is done. You're getting away from National Lampoon. You're ready to make that move in your brain. You say, you know what? I made the decision. I'm not doing anything else. I'm putting 100% into getting my production done. What were the first steps you took next? So that is a very big leap of faith, right? To say, I'm going for it. I'm going to make this happen. I'm taking my writing and I'm going to bring it to screen. How did that process start for you?
So that process started where I was like, all right, well, first I needed to get financing. I also needed to, I really just needed to like get my ducks in a row even before trying to get financing. So I had this, I kind of like rewrote the script again after I left National Lampoon to try to get it like as tight as possible. Like I got the page count down, I got a lot of the budget stuff down. Like, all right, we can't, what can I do to make this as cost efficient as possible to be able to make this? Then once I thought I had the budget in a good place, I learned how to actually budget a movie. So I knew just from working in the industry that everyone used movie magic.
Yeah, yeah,
And I didn't. I had like seen movie magic scripts and had worked on some projects at National Lampoon, but I never really budgeted a feature. So to be honest, I actually just went on YouTube and Movie Magic posts videos of like budget tutorials.
1,000%. Yeah, yeah.
A few of these. I'd highly recommend filmmakers watch these Movie Magic tutorials on YouTube and learn how to not only learn how to budget, but learn how just to use the software. And I did that. I made a budget. I made a schedule again through Movie Magic, just from watching tutorials and stuff on their YouTube channel. And then I put together a pitch deck that really was like a half creative deck showing like what the story was, and then also like a business plan. I did learn just through all the other experiences I had working in the industry, like kind of how to make an independent film. Like I worked on Hereditary, which was an independent film that ended up getting picked up by A24. So I kind of had an idea to do it, but it was much like all the other projects I worked on were like a much bigger scale than what I was setting off to do. And then at that point, I figured before I raised money, I should try to like get someone to help me. I was going to be producing this, I knew for sure, and raising all the money, but I wanted really I'd say like someone with a line producer background to be able to kind of help and vet my budget. Because again, I never really made a budget for a movie like this before, and was just taking advice from people on YouTube. So this is, I think, great advice for all the filmmakers, really anyone listening. But I put together a list of probably like 100 movies that were like lower budget comedy movies that had premiered at good film festivals like Sundance, Tribeca, Toronto, South by Southwest. And I made a list of all these movies, and I started just looking up the producers of these movies. And I tried to find people who say like were line producers of these movies. And then I kind of took that list, made it a big line producer list. And there was one really producer at the top of the list named Erica Hampson, who I'll say ended up coming on board and being a producer on my finished movie, which was amazing. But I ended up reaching out to Erica kind of off of like a cold call. We did have like one very brief interaction that I was able to reference probably like 3 or 4 years prior. But I said like, hey, working on this movie, looking for a producer to come on board. Like I have a budget, have a schedule, kind of just need you to vet it. And then I'll end up going out and trying to raise the money. And she read the script, really liked it, and came on board as a producer. And was kind of just there as like a sounding board throughout the whole process while I was trying to raise money, and throughout that whole year, which really was like 2021, I would say. So it was like 3 years ago, where she was really just like a sounding board. I was kind of still spearheading the ship, but having kind of almost like the blessing from someone like that, like saying like, okay, like I reviewed this budget, this is good. I did a pass on this myself. And I'm going to be working on this movie with you. When I was trying to reach out to investors, it really like gave them, I think, some comfortability. Like you could look me up and I had worked on some projects and was really passionate about this, but then I had another producer. I could say this person is working on my project. And if you look her up, she could produce like 40 movies that have been at the top film festivals or like are movies that people would have heard of. So that's definitely something that I think really benefited the project as a whole and overall my pitch, because I did that before I actually started talking to any investor. So that way, when I went to the investors, I already had my passion. I had this pitch deck, and I said, I also have a producer who kind of vetted the budget and is going to be helping out with some other stuff as well.
That's so smart. You had all the ducks in line, lined up. It's amazing because again, people don't realize this journey, this development process that you went through. You did it all right. That's fantastic, and I love that you said a lot of it, the scheduling, the budgeting, you learned it through YouTube. Look at that. I mean, you took the advice and you got the right people to back you up, and you had people vetting what you did, and you ran with it. Now you're out there. You're raising the financing, very difficult. Now, when you're doing that, was it a full-time, all-in, you're completely dedicated towards, I'm having meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting? How's your process of doing that? Again, I don't want you to disclose any kind of investors or anything like that, but your process of saying, I'm going to commit to myself to get the money raised in X amount of time? Did you give yourself barriers of windows saying it's going to be 3 months, 6 months? How did your process work?
So my process, again, this was like towards the end of 2020, I left National Lampoon and I had some money saved up just because, again, I was working for several years. Like I think at this point I was 25. So I just turned 30 right now. So I was 25. The pandemic at that point kind of in full swing.
Yeah.
No one's really going out and doing anything. So I was like, you know what? Like I was kind of living on my own for the previous maybe 7, 8 years. I was like, I'm gonna go move in with my mom, try to save up some more. Not that I was making any money at that point, but at least like try to stop spending so much money on rent and things like that. So I ended up really just moving back home. I actually sold my car to get some extra money as well.
Sure, yeah.
Just some more savings. Like, all right, if I'm at my mom's house, I could use her car whenever I want because she didn't really go anywhere. And I had enough money that I was like, you know what, I can kind of map out that I can work on this full time for like a little over a year before I fully run out of money. And really the whole year in 2021, it kind of like you both suggested, it was really just reaching out to some people I knew, whether they be local business people, friends of friends. Again, it was the pandemic and a lot of people were not really going out and spending money. People had extra money and were looking for alternative investments. So I ended up getting like quite a few friends to come on board as smaller investors. I ultimately got over 30 investors in the movie. It's not like I had one person to come in and fund the whole thing, which really was great because it gave me a lot more creative freedom because, again, you never want to lose anyone's money, and it's really like a huge obligation and responsibility I did to take on any investor.
Oh, yeah.
But I felt a lot better having all of these smaller investors opposed to like one studio funding the entire film. But really through like the whole year, I'd say 2021, I was trying to raise money. I had like a set goal, and really I started off pretty strong, and maybe I got like a fourth or a fifth of the way there after like a couple months. And then I kind of hit a bump a little bit. It might have been like maybe like March, April, May, and I really like wasn't really raising any more money. I kind of felt like I maxed out all my resources, and a lot of the people I would reach out to were like, "Oh, what cast is on board?" We didn't have any cast at that point. So I ended up kind of giving myself a few more months where I really just pushed out. I tried to get some actors on board and was calling agents, but really didn't have a ton of luck. Like no one was really taking me seriously as I was like trying to send offers out to agents and stuff myself. I would call them and they'd be like, "Oh, sounds great. Like who's the director?" And I would say that I was, and then they'd ask me who wrote the script and I would say that I did. And it kind of just reeked of like an amateur project. Yeah. So at that point, I was like, I'd say I really was like close to giving up. I even like started writing another script. There was like a very low budget project that I could make with the money I already had. So I was even planning for like, if I can't raise this, I was going to go to those investors and be like, "Hey, I kind of failed here, but I have this other script that I just wrote that we can make for this amount of money."
Yeah.
So I was even like kind of looking into that like as a potential possibility. And then I ended up, I don't want to say I necessarily looked into the rest of the money, but it was like end of 2021. It was like around this like Christmas, New Year's week. And I was like, you know what? I just spent like a whole year doing this. I've raised a lot of money, but not what I needed. So I kind of went back into the budget and was thinking like, what's the absolute lowest I can make this for? And I really like made so many budgetary cuts. I cut the budget pretty much in half.
Oh, wow.
And was thinking like, okay, I think I still could make a really good movie for this, and maybe we're just not spending as much money on certain things as I would have liked to. And then at that point, my budget was cut in half. I went to all of the previous investors I had and just pretty much just said like, "Hey everyone, like, look, I really don't think I'm going to be able to reach the goal I wanted. I made some tweaks in the budget. And I think I can still make like a very good movie for this amount of money." And everyone agreed to stay in. And then at that point, I didn't need that much more money to actually finish it. And I was like, you know what? Now, instead of having like a fourth of my goal, I have like over half of my goal. And to be honest, some of it was money I could have raised in post-production as well. I was like, what do I really need to actually film this movie? Because I knew that once I filmed it, it would be a lot easier to raise money in post.
Sure.
So I ended up, at that point, it was like the holidays of 2021. I was like, I'm going to give myself like 3 more months. If like March finishes, like January, February, March, by the end of March, if I don't have like a start date on this movie, or at least all of the money raised, I'm going to have to, I don't want to say necessarily give up, but change my plan. In that year, I was trying to raise money. I did get quite a bit of interest from other producers that were interested in like optioning my script. People did really like the script. And the issue was they just weren't really interested in me directing it as a first time filmmaker. And they wanted to try to make a bigger movie. I was like, this is kind of my vision for it. And they're like, we really like the script, but we'd love like to maybe see if we could get like a few $1,000,000 into this and make like a much bigger movie. And I was like, that sounds great. But I knew from like working at National Lampoon that there are so many things that can go wrong once a company options it. National Lampoon probably optioned at least 10 scripts when I worked there, and they didn't take any of them. So I was afraid of optioning my script and losing control and then having it just sit with another producer for a couple of years. So I was planning to do that if I didn't have a start date by the end of March. And then I really just hustled even extra hard for those like first 3 months of 2022 and ended up closing the rest of the, I didn't close all of the financing, but I got enough money to actually film the movie.
That's great.
And then once we actually wrapped production, we did have to raise a little bit more money. But again, at that point, everyone was super thrilled because once we started, like the movie everyone invested in, it didn't really have cast. And I put out like ideas of like who like a dream scenario cast was, but everyone was kind of on board with like no recognizable cast, as long as they were really talented and maybe they had been in some stuff. And then we ended up getting a really good cast after they all invested. And pretty much like once Jon Heder came on, so Jamie Lee, I think, came on first. And I was a huge fan of her from the HBO show Crashing and newer stand-up comedy. So she came on board. And then at that point, she's a writer and producer on Ted Lasso. And she was in, and we were like, had enough money to make the movie at that point. But she was working on Ted Lasso and just wasn't available to film for maybe like 2 or 3 months. So we set our start date out, and it turned out to be a huge blessing for us because in those like 2 to 3 months, we're like, all right, at this point, now we've got some extra time. Like we made our start date from a few months from now. Let's see if we can like send the script out to some like more recognizable actors. And then Jon Heder was really was my top choice. When I made this pitch deck, I mentioned like he was in the pitch deck. Like
that's what you wanted. Yeah,
like his picture was in there as like an ideal casting option, and he agreed to do the movie. And then once he came on board, pretty much all the investors I had were stoked, thinking like, wow, like we can't believe, we thought we were doing this little independent film, and now we have Jon Heder in it. We have Jamie Lee, who seems super funny. And then once Jon Heder came on board, kind of other dominoes started falling. Like Tom Berenger, who you mentioned, like came on board, and Shannon Elizabeth and Kate Flannery. So we really just got a great cast that I'd say Jon Heder was kind of the big domino, but Jamie Lee was at least, she had a ton of, I'd say, potential. She never necessarily starred in a movie, but she starred in a TV show, is a really great stand-up comedian, great writer and producer herself. So I think just having that as someone like Jon Heder could have looked at Jamie and been like, wow, this seems like someone who really needs a shot and could potentially break out. And I think Jamie really does, and just does such a good job in the movie, and all the cast really did a great job.
What a phenomenal cast really behind you. Brandon, as a writer, as somebody who came up these ranks, it must feel phenomenal to have this group of talent get behind something you created and say, you know what, not only do we believe in your writing, but what's so difficult is they also believe in you as a first-time director getting out there like that for a feature film, saying, you know what, we're 100% behind you as an individual. How did that feel? It must have been phenomenal.
So it definitely felt great. So having Jamie come on board at first was awesome because, again, I was a fan of Jamie. I mentioned my friend Gene that I wrote the script with. I had a text at one point that I showed Jamie while we were filming. It was from 2019, and I texted Gene like, Jamie Lee would be a really good Piper.
There you go.
And that was over 3 years before we actually filmed. And then we kind of had similar conversations about Jon Heder, to be honest. But getting Jamie on board was awesome. And then getting Jon Heder was great too, because Jamie kind of just like read the script and said like, awesome, I'm in. Jon Heder wanted to actually meet with me before he agreed to do the movie.
Oh, good. Okay.
And that was definitely I was very nervous because we had another producer who ended up coming on board, DJ Dodd, who was great in helping us cast the film. So once we had the financing, then DJ came on board and really helped really negotiate the cast contracts and speak to agents, because I mentioned that the agents weren't really taking me seriously. DJ did a great job with helping put this great cast together. But he ended up calling me. He's like, look, Jon Heder read the script. he's interested in doing it, but he wants to meet with you first. Like, as long as the meeting doesn't go horrible, like he should do the movie.
Yeah,
And I was definitely very nervous, thinking like, all right, a lot's riding on this, because I grew up watching Jon Heder, and I
Yep.
knew how good the movie would be with him in it, and I knew how good he would be in that role. So I really like, I think I had stayed up for maybe 2 or 3 days straight, like binging all of his movies, even though I had seen most of them already. And then him and I spoke, and we kind of hit it off over Zoom. And I think we kind of left it where I was just like, look, I'd really love to work with you, do the movie. And then a couple of days later, I think his agent ended up just calling DJ and saying that he's in. And then once he was in, it was great, because it wasn't a ton of work after that, because all of the other actors kind of just really liked the script. And I think they were also really excited by the idea of Jamie and John co-starring in the movie together. So it didn't really take much convincing for me. I could just kind of tell them my vision, and everyone did obviously trust me to come on board, which was great. Like getting people like Tom Berenger, who's like Golden Globe winner, Oscar nominee before I was even born, and Shannon Elizabeth starring in classics like American Pie and Scary Movie. So, and Kate Flannery in The Office, like maybe the most successful comedy show of all time. So,
legendary, absolutely.
Yeah, so it really, it was a great feeling just knowing that all of these talented people were trusting me and pretty much boarding the ship with me as the captain. It felt great.
That's amazing. I mean, I would be just as confident in you, because you do your due diligence. You're steadfast, even though, not to quote the title, but Plan B had your own Plan B with regard to doing it at a different level, and you went back to Plan A. Everything came together because they believed in you and what you do.
Yeah, no, really appreciate that. And I will say, the first vision that I had for the movie, when I wanted to make like this slightly bigger movie, the cast honestly was kind of like the cast we ended up getting.
Right.
Again, Jon Heder was in that pitch deck for the slightly bigger version of the movie that I tried to make before I had to cut the budget in half. And I think it really just took a lot of people willing to roll up their sleeve and be like, look, we really like this script. We want to make this movie. And I'd say, like, the movie now, a lot of people would see it and think it was a bigger movie. We had a couple like film festival screenings earlier this year, and a lot of people were, I'd say, very impressed when I confidentially mentioned to them. They're like, oh, what was your budget? And I would tell them like, wow, I would have thought this was like 3 or 4 times that. So I think it really just, a lot of the people rolling up their sleeves ended up really paying off for us.
That's so beautiful. It's an amazing opportunity. Now, you talked about leading the ship, and now you are the captain of the ship. You're on set directing these amazing people. A lot different than the beginning process. How was that whole environment? Because it must have been such a surreal experience. How was it for you, kind of overseeing this environment? Was it the vision you envisioned at the beginning? Was it the same way at the end? And how was it just working not only with these top tier talent, but again, the incredible crew and all the people with you, the producers, your DP, the great team that was with you lined up for this? How was it directing this amazing project moving forward?
So overall, especially looking back, it was an awesome experience that I'm really thankful for. I haven't directed anything since we filmed that, which at this point it was 2 years ago.
Sure.
So I definitely had some great experiences on set. It was a lot of fun. It was also very chaotic, and there was a lot of stressful moments. We were filming still during COVID. So there was always that thought in my head, especially as the producer, that like if someone tests positive for COVID, the whole movie could get shut down.
Oh, yeah.
So that was definitely very scary. And I was also, again, I was the lead producer of the movie. We did have 2 other producers, but I was the only producer on set.
Oh, wow.
So
wow.
That I would not recommend to any filmmakers listening. Definitely make sure you have someone on set who really is experienced and knows. Like Erica, unfortunately, got like stuck on another movie again, mainly because of COVID. Yeah, they kept having delays, and she was stuck on this other movie. And DJ, I think himself, he got married like a week before we were shooting, and was at his wedding and honeymoon and all this stuff, so he couldn't be on set either. So it was great directing. A lot of the producing stuff was very stressful, and I kind of wish I had someone else I could have relied on set, so I could have focused more on directing. Because there were some times where I was like having a creative conversation with a cast, and then like the production coordinator, someone walks up and like whispers some really bad thing in my ear about the overall production, like, hey, like one of our locations for tomorrow just like fell through. And I was like, all right, how are we gonna fix this out? Or hey, you gotta. I remember one morning, like there was some kind of issue with maybe they wouldn't let someone on the crew like sign the checks, or I had to, well, regardless, the point of the story was I had to like go push our call time a little bit so I could like go to the bank and like wire money to SAG or the payroll company or something. So those were just things that I had to do on top of directing the movie. But overall, yeah, it was a great experience, and I'm hopeful that I can direct another movie at some point.
Oh man, are you kidding me? You're 100% going to be directing another movie. I mean, I loved your trailer is phenomenal. Your attitude, the person you are, your work ethic, it's 100%, Brendan, that you're going to be a mainstay in this business and in this comedy realm. It's fantastic. Now, it's beautiful what you were able to accomplish on set. You get into post, you're ready to get it done. You have Quiver now getting it out there to get this thing sold, and you're getting a release very soon, September 27th. We cannot wait to hear more about where the release window is going to be and how you see this going in the future.
Yeah, so the whole process of post actually took like over a year. We finished the movie again. I said we filmed it summer of 2022. The movie was actually finished August 2023, and now it's September 2024. So the movie's been done for over a year at this point. But that whole process, we ended up getting a sales agent was the first step. Then the sales agent helped sell the film to Quiver, who's actually releasing it. And then the whole process with Quiver has been great so far. Like they obviously like the movie, they acquired it, and they are releasing it. Initially, it's going to be on VOD and digital platforms, which is think of like Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google Play, Vudu/Fandango, pretty much anywhere where you could buy or rent movies, it should be available. We are also having various like pop-up promotional screenings throughout, so it is playing in select cities and theaters, which is really exciting. So
that's great.
I'm gonna go out of my way to drive to pretty much any of these screenings within like a 2-hour drive thing. And I even have set up to do like Q&As after the screenings, a couple that are again within like a 2-hour drive. Then there's also a bunch in various cities that I'm really excited about. Like the movie's gonna be playing in Salt Lake City. It's gonna be playing in Ohio. So there's definitely a lot of exciting cities because people in these cities probably would not have heard of the film and definitely would have not seen it, I would say, outside of these screenings that we're having. So hopefully people can go, can see the movie, and then really just spread the word and get more eyes on it. Because that's ultimately the goal, to get people to see the movie.
100%, man. And with the trailer, with the people behind it, I'm sure this is going to be an incredible success. It has to be such a moment of pride for you and your team behind you. I mean, from a guy who said, you know what, I'm going to take that leap of faith and go and take this unpaid PA work, to now having this worldwide digital release and in theaters, and you have screenings, it must be phenomenal.
Yeah, no, it's definitely rewarding. It's been a long time coming. So pretty much I'd say people not in the film industry don't realize how long it takes to actually make a movie and for a movie to come out. So pretty much everyone that I know has been asking me for the last like 3 years, oh, when's the movie coming out? Now I can actually tell them September 27th, it's coming out. You can go watch TV.
No, that's great, Brian. And really, man, you are somebody that people can look up to. When it comes to living your dreams, you are it. Really. I mean, you are the perfect person to have on this show because you took your vision, you took what you wanted to get done, and you accomplished it. You sat out there, you set a goal, you set a plan, and you made it work, Brandon. It is like humbling to talk to somebody like you. It's incredible.
I really
and you never gave up despite any obstacle that came your way. You never gave up. You were steadfast, and you reached your goal. Congratulations.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate all the kind words you said, and really just allow me to come on and give me a platform to tell your listeners about the film. And hopefully some people can listen to this. Maybe my story can inspire others to go out and chase their dreams, and maybe some of them can go watch Plan B now.
Are you kidding me? 100% your story is going to inspire. And again, it's going to be Plan B, September 27th on every major digital platform site. Again, we mentioned Vudu/Fandango, Apple, Google Play. It's going to be out there. We'll have links in the description in the podcast below. Now, Brandon, I know our listeners are going to want to learn more about you. Where can people learn more about Brandon? Do you have a website or social media that people can follow? How can our listeners and our viewers learn more about the man behind the project?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Brandon Tamburri, and you could find me pretty much on any social media platform at Brandon Tamburri, BrandonTamburri, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, really anywhere. I also have a production company called Joke Zero, where I'm really just focused on comedic content that I'm writing, directing, and also producing. So you can check out Joke Zero at jokeszero.com. Zero is spelled out. Also, Joke Zero's on all the social media platforms at Joke Zero Comedy. And also another thing I'm doing to really help promote the movie and also just talk about filmmaking, I started a podcast that I'm producing, hosted by Anna Roisman, who's a great comedian. And throughout the podcast, Anna is just interviewing the cast and the crew of Plan B, really just to talk about not only their experiences working on Plan B, but also just how they got started in the entertainment industry and like what some of their experiences have been like. So that's called the Joke Zero podcast. That's coming out right around the same time as the movie. So if you liked what you heard today, you can definitely check out that podcast, and you can hear more from not only me, but from Jon Heder and Kate Flannery and some of the other great casts that we've had in the movie and the crew.
That is fantastic. We'll make sure to have links to Joke Zero podcast as well below. That is fantastic. I love everything you're setting up. Is to make Plan B as successful as can be. Brandon, truly, you are just an inspiring individual. We hope the release goes incredibly well. We'll make sure to promote as much as we could from our side. And again, anything you're doing, any kind of things in the comedic realm, or just you in general, we'd love to have you back on the show. You are a phenomenal guest, somebody who's a true inspiration. I'm sure our listeners are going to get so much from learning about you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Happy to come back anytime. And one thing that I'll leave everyone with is when I was trying to make this movie, there were so many sleepless nights where I would just go online, listen to other podcasts, and try to find filmmakers who actually did what I was trying to do. So I always made it a point to, like, when I actually make this, I'm going to go on as many podcasts as I can and try to get my story out there to hopefully inspire others to be able to do what I did. And even if it isn't in the film industry, just do whatever it is that they're trying to do, whether it's start a restaurant or start a business or be a professional athlete or something. But yeah, anything's possible. And I think that's really one of the reasons why I found this podcast and became a listener and now became someone who could tell my story on it.
Well, like minds think alike. So don't forget to invite us to Jersey City when you have the screening.
Oh yeah, absolutely. September 25th in Jersey City.
No, we hope to be there, Brandon, 100%. You are fantastic. And Brandon Tamburri, everybody, Plan B, September 27th, every digital platform out there. You are somebody so special. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the Live Your Dreams podcast, because I know our viewers and our listeners are dreamers, and you are somebody that is the epitome of the word. Thank you so much, Brandon, for everything. It has been a pleasure having you. As always, I'm Joe Gawalis, my co-host.
Where's Victor?
We'll have links in the description to Brandon, all his work, and Plan B below. Make sure everybody support what he is doing September 27th. It is so important to support artists like this who are taking these leaps, who are making things that are phenomenal, that can inspire others. Truly, Plan B is going to be something fantastic on September 27th. Thank you, everybody, so much for the Live Your Dreams podcast. We'll see you all next week. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much to both of you.